Alright, welcome to lecture 3. In the previous lecture, we started talking about walls and how to place them, move them, and adjust kind of their distances from each other so that we create a space. We also went through and changed their heights. We worked with their offsets, and we worked with constraints both top and bottom. So in this one, what we're going to be doing is actually modifying the existing walls. So I've got another project here. I just closed the other one out and started a new one. So what I'm going to do, again, back to the architecture tab at the top, and then I'm going to click on wall here, and instead what we had before was we just went with the generic 8-inch wall. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to click on this drop down right here, and what it's going to show us is a whole bunch of different walls that are preset. So when we did that preset option for the architecture template, it generated all of these walls along with it. Okay. So along with this, and I'm going to upload this file to the Blackboard as well, I have this SketchUp file I put together that's going to show a bunch of different types of walls that you could use. So for example, and this side that the camera's on right now is the interior, and then we have the exterior as well. So for example, you can, and don't tell me these are in the wrong position, I know they are, it just looked goofy when they were super low. So, got that Rona. Alright, so, right here we have what would be kind of like an unfinished garage interior. So this would be where you would have your exterior siding, you would have your sheathing, you would have your vapor barrier, you would have your studs and your cross bars, but you wouldn't have insulation and you wouldn't have gypsum. So this would be an unfinished garage. The next one up here is going to be more like a typical interior wall with no insulation, so you just have gypsum on both sides with 4-inch nominal studs. Next one here is going to be more like an an exterior wall where you would have 6-inch studs, insulation, you'd have your sheathing, your vapor barrier, and your siding on one side, and then your gypsum on the other. And then here we've got what would be like a brick wall. So this would be, again, same setup as the previous one. Instead of having the siding, you've got your brick, and brick is going to have a little bit of an offset. Most brick facade is going to have that space. Brick is porous, and you don't want it right up against your vapor barrier or it's going to fail. And then I have CMU, and then another one that we'll get into, or that I usually have to show students how to do, is what's called a furred wall. And so this is when you would have a precast concrete structure. You would use mounting holes to place wood into that, and then possibly even have rigid foam insulation in between these areas, and then you would put your gypsum over that. So I'm going to have this file online for you guys to access. It's going to have basically a couple of these walls, and I'm going to expand on this once we get into further into Revit. We'll be discussing floors, ceilings, and kind of how those all work together. Keep in mind, in general, this isn't stuff you'll necessarily have to directly deal with out in the real world. What you will encounter is that the engineers will basically tell you this is how it's supposed to go together. That's kind of what their job is. But understanding what the basic construction methods are of a wall is important, and especially when we are working in Revit, you do need to know how these things go together so that you can correctly set up the walls. And so let's go into what I mean with that. So here's Revit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this drop down here where it says basic wall, and I'm going to scroll all the way. Actually, let's go down. Let's start with an interior wall. So right here, here's an interior wall. It's the 4 7/8 inch partition. Actually, let me jump back real quick to the generic 8-inch we started with, just so that I can show you guys the difference in thickness. And again, I'm drawing this with wall center line by default here. So if I go and I place this next wall here, you can see that this one is just going to be marginally thinner than that 8-inch wall. So this one on the left, 8 inches thick. The one on the right, 4 7/8 inches thick. And that's because when Revit goes to actually place the wall, it determines what the thickness of that wall is based on the actual components that make up that wall. So let's see what this actually is made of. So if I click on this edit type button while I have that wall selected and it's set to here, I can click on edit type, and then again I can go to the structure option right here, and you can see that I've got gypsum wall, a metal stud, and let me drag this out so we can completely read that. So metal stud layer and then another gypsum wall board. So this is a typical metal framed interior wall. So for this class, generally I'm going to ask you guys to switch over to use what are the wood stud versions of everything, just to simplify everything. And so to actually create a custom wall, what you'll do is you'll start, I would at least generally recommend, you start with a template or a pre-built option that's fairly close to what you're trying to get to, and then make some modifications to that. So this right here is that 4 7/8 inch partition, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click duplicate, and I'm going to change this to 4.5 inch, and I'm going to get rid of the partition, and we'll call this wood stud wall. Okay, so I'm going to hit OK, and so now I'm on that wall after doing that. And if I want to, I can come back and I can click rename on it, and I can change the name as well in case I like accidentally spelled it wrong or something, whatever I need to do there. So changing the name hasn't changed anything about the thickness of this wall, though. You can still see right here the width says it's still 4 7/8 inch thick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on structure here for edit, and I'm going to come back into this menu. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the metal stud layer here. I'm going to click in this box, and it's going to give me this little 3-dot box. And in that, I'm going to click on this, and then it's going to give me a whole bunch of materials. The materials aren't super important right now, especially if you're just working with the studs. But I'm going to try and go over kind of the full process here just to cover everything. So again, click in here, I'll click on this little box right here, and then I'm going to type in stud in this search bar here. And it's going to come up with metal stud layer. So let me go back to wood, and we'll actually go with, let's see, structure wood joist rafter layer. And because we're not doing insulation, we'll click on this one right here. So just to keep it kind of strictly going along one step at a time of this is what I want to have in that spot, I'll click OK. And then because we're using nominal sizes, because we're using nominal sizes, I'm going to change this from 3 5/8 to 3.5. And then I'm going to change each of these gypsum wall boards. I'm going to go with 1/2 inch on these as well. Okay. Did my camera just shut off? No? Oh, weird. Alright, don't worry about that. Alright. So 1/2 inch there. Oh, I see what I did. Okay. So we've got 3.5 on the structure here, and we've got 1/2 inch on the gypsum wall board. So that's actually going to physically change the thickness of this wall, and you can see that listed right here. Revit also does some other stuff, so you've got your thermal resistance right here and your thermal mass. As far as being able to calculate what temperature this could resist for a heating and cooling load. So Revit can actually do those calculations. So let's stop right here. This is my basic wall that I'm going to go with. So this is my 4.5 inch. Now that it matches up with that wood stud wall, I'll hit OK, and I'll hit OK, and you can even see that as I hit OK, this wall actually got a little bit thinner. Okay, so now I can reuse this wall for different things. So let's go back to this SketchUp, and so this is the wall we just built right here. So it's got the gypsum on both sides. It's got those studs in the center. But let's say that I actually want to do an unfinished garage as part of my project. So back into Revit, and what I'll do again is I can select a wall, or I can just click on the architecture button, wall, and then choose an option from this list. So I'm going to start with this wood stud wall, and I'm going to modify this one. So what I'll do is, again, I will click duplicate, and I'm going to call this my, I don't recall what the width is. We're just going to call this exterior unfinished garage for now. Okay, so we'll call it that, and so now we're going to edit this one. So what I want to cover in this part is actually what we're doing with the different functions, materials, and get more in depth on the exterior and interior side. So, what I did earlier was we had our finish on both sides. I'm going to change this because we're going to go with an exterior wall. So this is actually going to be a 5.5 inch thick structure. Um, and anytime you have a structure for the walls, you want to set that as part of the core boundary. So what the core boundary is basically this is the core of the wall, and then things get attached to that. So when I have my structure here, the structure is going to be actual studs that hold up the wall, and those exist within the core boundary. This right here is just a finish face, and since it's an unfinished garage, we don't need it. So I'm going to click on this line right here, and I'm going to hit delete. Okay? So now we've got nothing below our core boundary. We just have these studs right here. And let me double check. Yeah, we did not use, so we are sitting on the wood joist rafter, but with no bad insulation. So we'll make sure that this is checked as a structural material just to be completely accurate with what we're doing here. Next, I'm going to come to the outside here, and first I'm going to change this. So going back to here, what we want is, we're going to be over here, we want this sheathing layer first. So let's see, let's go with sheathing, plywood sheathing, and we'll leave that at 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to change this function to substrate. So a substrate is something that you would attach other things to. That's what the sheathing does, in this case just generic plywood, is it provides a surface that spans the gap between the joists, or sorry, between the studs, and allows you to attach things to it. Alright. So next I'm going to click on this row, and I'm going to hit insert, and you can see that it now has another option up here. So the next one that we're going to have here is going to be a membrane layer. And again, you don't 100% need to know everything that I'm doing here. I want you to, while I'm doing this, understand the process of how I'm adding these layers and why I'm putting them where they are going. So let's see, let's do vapor retarder. Click OK. Your membrane layers are generally going to be thin plastic sheets, so they're not going to have really any thickness to them, so we're not going to set any thickness. I'm going to do insert again, and according to this, the next thing that we have is our actual siding. So I'm going to change this to finish 1, and I'm going to change the material to siding. And let's do wood. Let's see. Could have sworn there was. I could have sworn there was a good one, and I don't want to go into the advanced material libraries right now. So let's do. Let me pause it. Stop wasting your. Okay, so I cheated a little bit. We will get into the advanced material library later. For now, I created a little bit of a siding thing here, so I'm going to hit apply. I'm going to hit OK. And so now I have, let's do 1/2 inch there as well. Alright, so we've got our finish layer, which is our exterior siding. We have our vapor barrier, we have our plywood sheathing, and we have the structure, the wood. So when I hit OK now, let's go hit OK. And so now when I place this wall, you can see that it's a little bit thicker than the original one we started with. And let me drag this out here so we're all the same length. And now if I go to my 3D view, you can see that we've got these 3 different walls going on. Oops. 3 different walls going on here. And I can change down here in the bottom left. I can click on this little checkerboard thing here, change that to fine, and then I can change this to consistent colors. Nope, not that one. Shaded. No? Oh, there we go. Realistic. There we go. Okay. So now you can see here I've got this exterior wall, or sorry, this interior wall that's got the 2 sides that are gypsum. Let's get rid of this so we can actually see. Let's move you over here. And so we've got, this is gypsum. You can, I don't know if you guys can really see, there's a little bit of a texture there. And then you can obviously pretty easily see the slats that are part of the siding that's in this one. So you can see that there are actually physical exterior sides to this project, now that we have those set. So next what I want to get into is kind of managing all of your walls. So right now I've got these two walls here. I'm going to go back to architecture, wall, to start drawing, and then I'll go back to level 1 so I can start drawing a garage. So I'll start, again, I'm going to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on which side is my finished face. So I'm going to draw all of mine from the finished face of the interior just to keep it consistent. So I will have this right here, and while you're drawing you can toggle which face is which side of your drawing line by hitting the space bar. So I can toggle that right there. So I will do this unfinished room right here. And then across this space, I'll hit escape so I'll get out of that menu right there. And then I'm going to come back and I will find my wood stud wall that I created. And I will place this across here. And one of the things you'll notice is that Revit's actually going to fill in that little gap. So if I was to come back here and drag this out, you can see that it kind of unsnaps itself from that wall. And then if I drag this back in, it's going to actually do that. And you can even go in here to the settings and kind of change some of this. I can't see the line right now. Let me change this to... we'll worry about this later. Okay, so with this set, let me go a little bit higher. Let's do 1/2 inch. So you can see right here, these are the actual parts that make up this wall. So these two areas right here have merged, and so this is actually the stud layer. That's kind of hard to make out exactly, but this little area that's merged right here is that stud layer. This little gray area that's a line right here and a line right here, those are going to be the actual gypsum walls for that interior stud layer. And then you can see right here, this is that plywood, which is that unique color. You're not, again, because there's no thickness, you're not going to see the vapor barrier. And then we have, and I don't think it's actually going to show up in 3D. So, and then finally you've got the finished face on the outside there. So you can actually see in Revit kind of how your walls are physically assembled through that manner. Now, if I want to continue building this around and I've actually got a finished interior, then what I can do is come back up here. I'll find the unfinished garage, and I'll come back in here, edit it. Oh, sorry, not edit that. I want to duplicate it, and we'll call this exterior wall. I'm not being super consistent with my naming right now. If this was a full project, I'd probably be a lot stricter about how I was naming these. Let's see, so I'll go to edit, and all I want to do now is I just want to create an additional finish. I need to put the gypsum wall back in. So this is my new exterior wall. I'm going to hit insert, and you can see that when I did that, now I'm up here at the top. And what I want to do is I want to move this down to the bottom. So with this first row selected, I'm going to click on down, 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 so that I'm on the other side of the core boundary. And I have this one right here. Again, remember the top it for your walls is going to be your exterior side, and then the interior side is going to be that bottom area. And unless it's part of your stud, you don't want it inside of that core boundary. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to click to finish one, and then I'm going to change this back to gypsum wallboard, and then I'm going to change the thickness to 1/2 inch. And for this, I'm going to actually change it so it's got the bad insulation. And I'll hit OK, OK, and then actually, real quick, let me jump back. So there's the exterior wall, and then we have the unfinished garage. Oops, come back. So right here you can see the thermal resistance. The R value is 42.5 right there. And then The unfinished garage is 32. So the higher your thermal resistance is, the better it keeps in heat or keeps out heat, depending on what you're trying to do. So this, again, it's not important for really what we do, but it's one of the nice things that Revit calculates. So we'll go for our exterior wall here, and judging by this, because it's got that higher thermal resistance, it's the one I'm looking for. Now, when I start drawing this again, I want to make sure that I'm drawing it in the correct position so that my walls don't get all funky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, again, start drawing this, and I'm going to actually start at this corner right here. Still using finish face, or sorry, what I'm going to do now though is because our finish faces are changing, I'm actually going to change this to finish face exterior, and I'm going to start on this outside corner here. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep my outside walls lined up properly. So I'm going to draw this out here. Let's go to 10 feet. Another click. It snaps based on how far in and out you are, so if I'm super close, you can see that it goes by inches, but if I go out to kind of the right distance, it'll go 6-inch snaps. So there we go, 10 feet. And then we'll do 10-ish there. And then this one I'm just going to have to drag, and I'm not happy with that. So what I can do to get this line up correctly with that side, besides just redrawing it from that side, is I can change these witness lines so that they're both lined up to the outside finish face here, and then I can hit 0, and that's going to line these up perfectly. Now, it's not, I was going to say it's not doing that. It's not joining these together, and the reason why it's not joining these studs for the interior wall and this unfinished garage is because this section actually has the bad insulation. So Revit is recognizing that material difference and not actually drawing this line through, whereas here you can see it's drawing the sheathing and the exterior finish. I don't know why it's not caring about that though, that's weird. Should be joining the gypsum, it's not. I'm not too worried about it. So, okay, so here's this little space right here, and if I go to my 3D view, here we go, I've got this space. I can now set this to go up to level 2, which it is, starting at level 1. And there I have a small, simple space right there with using 3 separate walls. And one of the things I'm going to kind of, I'm always going to be a jerk about, is making sure that you guys have your interior walls lined up correctly. And so that little trick that I did where I got this finished face lined up and this one, what's going to happen at one point or another is you're going to start out with your exterior wall going through your project, and then you'll have this come out here. And what usually happens is you will then come back in with your interior wall, and you'll click somewhere like here to place it, and then you'll jump it around and you'll draw it out. Now, while it's lined up with the exterior, this isn't usually how you would frame it. You don't want a whole bunch of extra work for the construction workers to now have to come in and do a little thin strip of gypsum right here. So what you would typically do is make sure that this is lined up with this face over here. And so what I always recommend is you draw your exterior walls, and then you come back in, and when you do your interior walls, you actually make sure that you line it up with the finished faces on the interior like this. So I'm going to draw this out, and I can actually do this with either. So I started doing that with finished face exterior and flipped it around, or I can do finished face interior. Either way, it's going to work because it's drawing it based on this finished face. Doesn't matter which side the finished face is because it's an interior wall. But I'm just making sure that it's lined up with these studs right here, okay? So it's those little details that I will be calling you out on, where just having this face right here line up correctly is super clean and just kind of indicates that you've taken that extra attention to detail. So when you are putting your walls together, make sure you're doing that. All right, so in this demo, again, we covered kind of creating, modifying, and making little changes to walls. We didn't get into materials, and I'll get into materials in the next lecture, but I'm trying to keep that limited for this week because it's still the first week of class. So next lecture, which we'll be getting into, is going to be modifying materials and actually going into the material browser, creating unique materials. And then once we've done that, I'll show you how to do doors and windows, super simple, and then we'll go on from there. So that's all for this one. I will see you guys in class, I guess. Bye.